Oracle Oriah, and this is Alistair. I'm from the US, he's from the UK, and today we're bringing you another steaming hot cup of cosmic coffee. Today's topic, we are going to be discussing something more personal, and in my case, I'm going to be sharing my story a little bit about what I've been going through while I've been in quarantine, the things that have come up for me, and how I've been clearing them. And it's a good time to talk about it because we're into October now, so I've had plenty of time to really work on this area. So before I launch my story, is there anything you want to say, Alistair? Because otherwise I'll just be talking and talking and talking.
So, no, you go ahead, get us rolling.
All right. So everyone, for those of you who don't know, I'm an only child and I was raised out here in Los Angeles, California with my parents, and they were married like 35 years. My dad died when I was about 25, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom from Honduras, and she was, uneducated and came from like the mountains, a coffee plantation of Santa Barbara. And my dad was a high school dropout, so he was just like all over, the valley, doing all of his like greaser things, with car clubs and stuff. The last thing he was thinking about was school and education, and he was a good-looking guy. So for him, it was all about the girls, and so that's all that mattered. So I didn't get a lot of information growing up. So it was a very strange environment. My parents were very, I think after a while they didn't understand why they were with each other. It was very nice and convenient when it first started, and I came along 3 years in, but I don't think they knew really why they were together. They were not like, they were fully mixed matched. My mom's an Aquarian, my dad was a Libra. They both had completely opposite childhoods, and both of them didn't have a lot of information. My dad was raised in a military school, and I literally had two parents that were in shock. So they were in shock with themselves, and they were in shock that they were married, and they were in shock they had a child. So here I come along, and I am bursting at the seams, Taurus Leo, wanting to explore everything, wanting to do everything, super excited, super happy, and very introspective. I was always very introspective at a young age. I was very insular, so I was always like in my imagination and reviewing things. But what happened was I didn't get a lot of parental guidance. Therefore, the 5 children and 5 husbands probably would explain a lot. So I was on my own very quickly. By the 4th grade, my mom I saw that I wasn't really going to get more information than I was getting already from her. So I felt like at the 4th grade mark, I surpassed her, and I was on my own. And my dad was never home. He was always working. And so I liked my freedom and I enjoyed being on my own. But I also noticed that I didn't have a lot of parental information. So there wasn't a lot of talks. There was, don't do this, don't do that, stay out of this. And it was the time frame. I was born in 1973. So, it was just a different time. Okay, so what happened was I launched at 18, moved out, and I was on my own, had kids young, got married many times, whatever. I did this really great, big, giant, crazy life in LA. And then the shit hit the fan. How it hit the fan was I finally got married to my husband now. We've been married 10 years. And I had already done 15 or 10 years at least of really strong transformational work on myself. I was already a life coach. Everything was great. But I noticed I had a really hard time connecting intimately, like face-to-face, face-to-face combat. I felt like I had a hard time connecting to another person in the smallest ways. Like I could be a mother, I could be a good wife, I could be a good friend, I could help with everything, but to make those little connections that were really tiny, I would rather die. Okay, so I just did not have that information. Plus I had 15 years of domestic violence, tons of sexual violence that I had cleared, but where it showed up is where it was time for me to be vulnerable. And so I was this Viking warrior all the time, and of course, because I survived. But when it was time to be gentle and vulnerable and connected and intimate and very present, I would get very nervous and scared that he's going to probably eat me alive and I won't make it through this situation. So I would start panicking because I didn't have information. So I'd get really nervous and I'd get scared, and then I'd get immediately mad at him if he didn't take care of me. And I needed him to take care of me immediately. So he had to tell me that I was okay, I'm going to make it, I'm a fight. But he didn't know any of this was going on. Like, he didn't know this is what was wrong with me. So in his world, he thought that I was just freaking out unnecessarily all the time. Every time it came down to these moments, he would get the wrong impression. So he kept thinking that I was scared of him, which I was, but it was mostly just intimacy. I was scared of men. I was scared of just being intimate. I didn't know how to connect those dots. And as I went to ask him to help me, we also realized he didn't know how to connect those dots because he had kind of a similar upbringing in different ways. His parents were educated and they were attorneys and they were Indian and first generation, and they were extremely busy, and he had siblings and they didn't give him a lot of time, and he grew up in the Bronx. So it was like kind of he was on his own also. So then here we are, the two of us have this very diehard, resourceful survival personality, and we know how to get through anything, and we can be on our feet and we can handle anything, and we're really great at that. But when it came to being tiny and vulnerable and little with each other, not happening. It was so bad. So we didn't know any of this was really going on fully until the quarantine. And that's because we were always entertained, always working, always traveling, always doing stuff. And so we weren't ever focused on that. Thank God for the quarantine, right? In some ways, because you're forced to connect. And so I'm sure, Alistair, you've had that same experience with your partner. You have to interface. So the more we had time alone and the more we were focused on each other, the more we realized that there was a problem. And the problem was we both would get nervous. So it was like two kids that don't know how to like talk like that anyway, like intimately. So the work began, and it started right away. So like in February, that's when it began, because we were already home now for 30 days. And let me tell you, we're not used to that. We're always on the go. So for us to like be together and like connect was very foreign. So as we started to do that, it was like we started unearthing this giant, massive area of mistrust of human beings at the core level in intimacy and love and connection, physicality, anything to do with being vulnerable. We had zero information. Now, we didn't know that. I didn't know that that's what was happening. Neither did he. We had to figure it out. We had to figure it out. And it was extremely messy because I thought he was trying to attack me. He thought I was trying to attack him. But all we were trying to do was figure out how to see each other. And nobody knew how to do that. And we had no guidance. So then we really started to realize this had a lot to do with our upbringing. And because we're coaches and we're shamans, so we know how to reverse engineer. So we were looking back at like, okay, well, where did this start? And all of it started elementary school. We were very young. And that's when we saw that we were just basically on our own. So even though we technically can connect to people because we love people and we love animals and babies and all that, so we know how to connect and we're empathetic. But when it came to like two strong individual people, two intelligent, strong individual human beings looking at each other, and we love each other, but we don't know how to be vulnerable, that's when we realized that we were in over our head, and nobody can guide us out of that, except for maybe the guides that Riz channels, which that's when he started channeling guides for us more this quarantine. And the guides would come through, because he's a trance channel for those of you who don't know, and you could look it up, rizmirza.com if you want to know who he is. And so they started channeling, and they started saying things like, okay, guys, it's good that you guys are finally at this point. This needed to happen. You needed to uncover this. And it was totally terrifying because I'm coming from a place where I don't have information. So what am I supposed to do? I don't know how to solve any of this. I don't know how to make it better. I don't know how to feel better in myself. So I started getting very emotional. Now, for all of you out there who are emotional people, the last thing you want to do is get emotional, because once you're emotional, you feel like you're spinning out of control and you can't get control of your mechanism. So the more emotional I would get, I was constantly going between my childhood and my present day. And I would see this arc of emotions, and it was all consistent. I'm not seen, I'm not heard, I'm not loved the way I need to be, which I know a lot of you feel that way. It's not uncommon. And I also added, I'm being ignored, because that was the specialty in my home, was I was ignored. And when I'm ignored, I feel alone on the planet, and I don't know why I'm here. Why did I bother? I'm finally in love with my husband at a level I've always wanted to be in love. My 5th husband, married 10 years. I'm so happy. And I feel so alone. And I know a lot of people feel alone in general, but like in my world, as being a shaman and life coach, etc., I should be already past this. Like, I don't need to be still alone, like feeling that way. So I would connect and try to, I know, but like most people do feel alone. And it's just like, I know that it's okay to be alone. I just made it into a really bad thing. So when I would ask my husband to join forces with me and work with me in this area, he then mirrored me. So then he would go through all the same emotions and feelings I had for himself. So now we're both doing it, like echo. We're both echoing each other, which is horrible. Because who's gonna rescue? Who's gonna get us out of this? We're in this like cycle. I say one thing, he says the same thing. I mean, we know we're twins, but like seriously, this is like we were just echoing each other back and forth. So finally, you know, the guides started working with us enough and breaking through these layers of pain that we were neglected. We felt neglected as kids. So we had to clear that, and it was very, very, very painful. And then we had to get into the creation part of it, which is why did we even, as souls, ask for that experience? And of course, we found all the benefits and all the reasons why we chose that. And inside of that is where we started to feel camaraderie with each other. And we started to feel that feeling of like compassion, like, oh, you know, we both went through the same thing. Let's take care of each other. Let's be gentle. Let's be nurturing. Let's slow down. Let's breathe, you know, the whole thing. So we started doing that. And then all of a sudden we realized, okay, we might make it through this. And that was like September, going into September. So it took us 9 freaking months to get to that point, like birth, right? The 9-month cycle. So finally, I started making some how do you say it? Headway. I started making some headway. And we started to become friends, but the friends that we were becoming was from the kid. So the little kid in us started saying hello to each other, which needed to happen because we didn't know how to do that. And the little kid who's so shy and little and scared started talking to each other. And we started saying, are you okay? And the other person would say, yes. Are you okay? Did you survive? Yes. Okay, good. And so we made it together finally as friends from our children and us. And from there, we've started to like develop now. And we are kind of like in our adolescent phase now going into October. We feel the holidays and we feel like we're more adolescent. We feel better. We're connecting better and we're relaxed. But we feel like we literally came out of the womb, and we actually feel like we're super raw because we didn't know this part was here inside of us. So the quarantine, that's what the quarantine did for me. So what happened was I started the Starseed group in May, and I launched. I was so happy. And then all of this stuff started happening with my husband and myself. And I had to like, whoa, step back. And I didn't want to, but I had to. And then I was less available on my group and less active than I was. And that's why I pulled back so much. And I'm not doing Zoom group things anymore and all that because I had to take care of this massive issue. And since I've done this, I literally feel like a new person. I literally feel like I came through a wormhole. Like, I survived. Like, first of all, I survived just my life from childhood, but then like I survived relationship, and then I survived intimacy, which some people never ever survive that. That's the most scariest thing in the world. And I can't believe I did. And it's like a miracle. And I'm here to tell the story, and I'm just barely on the other side. So it's still very fresh, but I wanted to share it with everybody. So you guys know, like, even though I'm a shaman, life coach, blah, 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 I'm still going through big stuff, just like you all are going through. And Alistair, you and I talk all the time, and I know that you're going through huge metamorphosis changes as well in different areas, and you're growing, and there's so much happening in your world. So I guess today we're just doing a little sharing and talking about these different things. So that's my story. That's what's been happening.
Thank you for sharing. I think it's quite interesting. There's a few things. I'm going to cross-examine you now. A lot of the stuff that you're talking about that you and Riz have gone through, like, is very, it's not exactly the same, but there's parallels for me and my partner Emma at home in other aspects. But the end result, and the nucleus of those behaviors and experiences are quite similar. And I think, like, if we take the micro into the macro, we're talking about facing shadow selves, unintegrated trauma, and unrealized parts of the kid versus the child self. Because a lot of us talk about inner child. We don't talk about the inner kid, do we? Which is the difference between being that kind of, the child in my mind is that kind of like, I want to experience everything. I want everybody just reaching out and grabbing, and whereas the kid is more kind of like wants to be like playful and silly. So we've kind of gone through that stage. And interestingly, like with the quarantine and everything, and yeah, it's going to come back. I'm sticking to my prediction of July before we're kind of like out and about having parties and doing stuff, because let's be realistic. The world is being asked, it's asking of us to face our own shadows, and the more that we resist, the more it's going to persist and make us angrier and sicker and more frustrated, and like we're in a box. And I think if we get, sorry, I just got distracted. The feedback came through on the voice there quite bad.
Yeah, I want to talk about that for a second with everyone. Okay, so we're having audio technical issues, and it could be a number of things. We've been working on this for a while. We hear that Alistair's not coming through so clear. However, he does have all this like really good microphone equipment, everything, and so do I. So we don't know if it's Zoom. We don't know exactly what it is, but what we're going to do is we're going to get these little headsets, these little earbuds, and we're going to use that to see if that helps isolate the audio better. And I'm recording on in computer audio. So it's not even recording from the outside speaker system here. But what's happening is he's getting feedback on his end. So he definitely needs to have some earbuds. And maybe even me too. So we're going to solve this audio issue. We've been working on it, just so you know. What was that?
If we both have earbuds, because we've both got long hair, so you're not going to notice it.
Yeah.
Then we don't need to have anything coming out. I think my money is on that, but we'll experiment and see.
Okay.
I'll ask some friends as well. Anyway. Yeah, if I've been chatting about this a lot with people. Things are changing, things are moving up to a kind of a more integrative unity consciousness, or being invited to do that, and more people are going the other way. You see it on the world stage, you see it in people's own lives, you see it on the things they post on social media. They're resorting to aggression, blame, shame, all of this stuff, because they haven't been equipped with the information to deal with a mass existential question. And our leaders at present are also not equipped to deal with existential questions. We've got people that are just concerned about how to make as much money as possible and make it easier to make as much money as possible, which is why pandemic is the perfect test of these people, because it's like, will they learn from it? Will they grow from it? Will they change? Will they develop? You know, I would say the jury's out on that one, but we know the answer really already. So a lot of people are looking to them for answers rather than looking inside. And one of the courses I've been doing has been about clearing techniques. So I'm a qualified belief clearing practitioner now, which doesn't mean I'm going to go around curing people of their Christianity or anything like that. It's more about the kind of the stories we tell ourselves in the subconscious, those opinions that then got reinforced and become beliefs, like we're saying about these shadow aspects, like we're saying about the inability to be open in certain aspects, the inability to be intimately vulnerable in some capacity. These things, they get, you know, something happens, something reinforces it, and it's kind of hardwired, and then you're in that loop, feedbacking. And, you know, how are we going to get through on the back of this en masse? I don't know. But individually, we have to really look at these like clearing techniques, and you know, things like EFT is a fantastic one. The tapping, I don't know if you do the tapping.
Yeah, I love tapping.
Yeah, tapping is like, because you're working on the acupuncture points, but just tapping, bam, bam, bam. So it's something you can do anywhere. You don't have to go to a practitioner, and disrupting the meridians, which is based on Chinese medicine, just disrupting the meridians, the points in the energy body.
Do you want to do a little quick demonstration to show what tapping looks like for people who have never seen tapping?
Why, certainly. I will show you the tapping sequence that I've learned. And this was kind of like an intro to tapping, this particular one. And essentially, there is a phrase that you use in the tapping, which is, let me just get this file up here. It was so funny, I did an Instagram live video with one of my friends earlier, and we were talking about this. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. So
Instagram. I've only actually done it a couple times, but I thought it was really, really interesting, and I really understood the science behind it.
Yeah, I think we should maybe look at doing some. I think it'd be a laugh.
Can you show a physical demonstration of actually what it looks like when you're doing a tapping, like on your face?
Yeah. I've just got my notes up here, so I'm actually going to talk. I can't see you right now. I can just see the notes. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So basically, there's what you need to do with the tapping is you need to essentially use two fingers, but tap really, really hard, as if it was like, you know, policeman's knock on the door, and you're starting on the karate chop part of the hand there for this particular sequence. Now, of course, there's many different ways to do it, and the statement that we're going to, so let's say, let's just take what we were talking about a minute ago. So the key statement there is intimacy. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to say is, even though I have this belief that because of my trauma, I do not deserve intimate connections.
Right.
I deeply love, accept, and forgive myself. So we start tapping quite firm on that karate chop part of the hand there. We're going to do this 3 times. So this is a repeat after me. Are you ready?
Yes.
Even though I have this belief.
Even though I have this belief.
That because of my trauma, I'm not deserving of intimate connections with the person I love.
But because of my personal trauma, I do not deserve the personal connection with the person I love.
Intimate connection, sorry.
Say it again.
And then it's intimate connection. You said personal connection. This will become clear in a second. And then the second part is, I deeply love, accept, and forgive myself.
I deeply love and forgive myself.
Accept and forgive myself.
I deeply love and accept myself.
Deeply love, accept, and forgive. Right, let's go again.
Oh, I didn't hear the forgive part because the
Oh, so, no, it's okay.
stupid
Don't worry,
signal.
man.
I deeply
Let's,
love, accept, and forgive myself.
excellent. Okay, so let's do it again. Even though I have this belief that because of my personal trauma, I don't deserve the intimate connection with the people I love.
I don't deserve the personal, intimate connection with the people I love
Because of my trauma, or however you want to say it.
because of my trauma.
And then the second part is I deeply love, accept, and forgive myself.
I deeply love, accept, and forgive myself.
Okay, so normally we'd say that a third time, but I'm going to take you through the cycle now. So we're going to take the key word of that statement, which was intimacy, which is why I wanted to clarify that beforehand. And we're going to go through three times saying the key word in each of these positions. So that put the crown chakra, tapping on there, intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
And then in the middle of the brows, like around the third eye, two hands, intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
And then on the side of the eye socket, on the bony part, intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Underneath the eyes here, both hands, intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
And then on the dimple here under your nose, intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Dimple under the lip, intimacy, intimacy,
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Then this part, the soft part here, just underneath the collarbone, you can either tap it or you can press into it, whatever feels right for you. And then we do the same, so the soft fleshy part, and then it's intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Then here in between the fleshy part, between the thumb and the forefinger on the back of the hand. Yep, that's it. Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
I like to do the tip of the index finger as well. Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
And then back on the karate chop to finish. Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
Intimacy, intimacy, intimacy.
So that is one cycle of that particular version of EFT. And you can, that statement that we use at the start is interchangeable. So you can write that, if you get a piece of paper, write that down, then you can make a whole list of stuff.
Can you explain exactly how that works? Like, what is that about? How does it work in the body, the programming?
So we're essentially like tapping this belief out of us, because like just for the purpose of our viewers at home, the belief is something that is essentially an opinion. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fact, but becomes reinforced by an event. So then it gets crystallized into a belief. You're holding this in the subconscious mind, and using this particular sequence of the tapping that we just showed you there, we're essentially like working with that energetic field. It's so hard to explain this without sounding like completely like, hey man.
Well, it's about I think it's about disrupting the brain patterns and the frequencies in which you record information on a daily basis. So then you come in and you disrupt that and create a new pattern, right?
That's it. So with this one, this is about taking stuff out. We're not putting new stuff in here, we're just taking stuff out.
Right.
And if we take stuff out, it creates space for new things. But also, like, I find this EFT exercise quite relaxing. You know,
some people do it. They do the tapping with essential oils, very specific essential oils that go into the brain. There's certain essential oils you can look up that activate the brain in particular ways. And of course, I'm not an expert or even close to being one that could talk about this. I know some people who are very inept with it, and they know how to work with the oils and the brain and how it receives information. It's very fascinating science of how the body retains information.
That would be quite a cool discussion to have in
Totally.
we just kind of skirted over this really, just as a sort of, because I didn't want it to become like an hour session of EFT, but like I find it really super useful because you can do that anywhere, you know. You don't need anything.
You know, it's interesting, when I went under the eyes, that's where I really felt something happening, like something, because the eyes reflect and the eyes see. And I felt it, like it reverberate to the back of my brain when I did that. And I started to feel like the authenticity of what I'm saying. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
So I'll send this as a note to you on Messenger, just so you know the process that I'm using at the minute. And you know, I've got a whole big long list of stuff that I do the EFT with, and I just swap in the keyword with that statement. And you know, we did one cycle. Sometimes I'll do 3. Sometimes I'll do 5. It's really good if you're feeling kind of crappy about something. But well, let's take a practice.
The fact that it's physical is another really big important facet, because you're feeling your own touch. So and you're feeling an activation also in the 3D. So it's not all in your head, mental.
Well, this is something that's really, I think, is really important as we're moving through the year to remember, is that we're not separate entities. It's not the mind and the body. It's not the mind and the body and the spirit. It's all of them together at once, existing in some sort of cohesion. The body is just the axis point of these things. You know, like if we're playing a computer game and we have our character, that's hello, you know, that's the body. But then you're going to turn the games console off and go off and do something else, you know, then kind of into like the higher mind or the spirit or higher consciousness there. And I think, like, particularly in the spiritual community at the moment, a lot of people are forgetting this fundamental truth that the body is your covenant in this reality, especially when people are saying, oh yeah, we won't need them in the 5th dimension, man. It's bullshit, you know. 5 includes 3. And people are forgetting this at their peril. They're detaching from the reality. And that only serves to create a new shadow self.
Right.
Because what happens when we're all still here on the 22nd of December this year, after the winter equinox? What happens when all of the different conspiracy stuff doesn't come to pass? What happens when there aren't no mass arrests? What happens when politics don't necessarily go their way? What happens when there isn't a big financial reset? That's it. I'm calling you lot out today because it's easier to believe these things when the world around you stops making sense. Because like Oriah, you were saying, you don't have the information to deal with what's going on. So if we remember that we are in the body, but not of the body, we can find some logical path through this without having to turn to the extremities of ideology. Because at the end of the day, it's no different from someone standing there with a religious book and a gun, and it can be a different religious book and a different flag behind them. To me, it's no different. Extremity is extremity. And
it's interesting. I love that you're bringing up this analogy, because you're talking about how the macro, the world, reflects the micro, what we deal with in our inner space, and reverse is true as well. And I like that you're talking about that, because that's a huge teaching, that we should always be paying attention to what we're going through at home and with ourselves individually in the micro is a reflection of what's happening in the macro. So where we freak out, or where we don't feel like we have information, or we feel like we're lost and we feel like we're going to fall off the edge of the earth and we don't know what's going on, that's how it's the growing pains of what the earth is going through. And, you know, like in my case, it was 9 months, and, you know, who knows how long this will last. I mean, it's like a birthing cycle that we're in.
Yeah. Well, there's, you know, depending if we want to lean into that for a moment, you know, there's many different schools of thought saying that this goes on all the way through to 2032, but in different aspects, different, you know. And if we talk about 12 years in terms of a global shift, 12 years ago was the financial crash, which mysteriously, the system managed to survive it, but it's kind of been like a zombie since then, you know. If we look ahead 12 years, things will be very different again, because even like with government in the UK, like I don't agree with the politics of the UK at the moment at all, but you know, big deal. I'm not choosing it in my reality, I'm rejecting that information. But it was interesting to hear the leader saying, you know, we're going to do everything differently, everything's going to be renewable, and we're not going to go back to the way things were before. Immediately, you get people coming out going, whoa, 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 no, 1984. Whoa. It's all of this stuff. You know, it's there's a term for it. We call it smoking hopium. So they're addicted to the next little grain of hope that they shove in the glass pipe and really chuffing on it, and then it puts them into bliss for a few moments. When
A dangerous word called hope.
yeah, that's it. Well, in my coaching, I have banned words.
Me
And
too. Hope is one of the top ones. You should get rid of that first.
I was just going to say that's one of the ones that is like
that's at the top. If your name is Hope, change it.
Yeah. Well,
do not ever utter the word hope ever. There's no power in that. You'll find nothing there. It's empty and meaningless.
Yeah, exactly.
You can have faith. You can have faith. You can believe in something, a higher good. You can believe in a higher cause and something good, like energetic. But hope is hopeless.
Yeah, that's it.
Nothing there.
If it's another way of, you know, like I like this analogy of handing the keys over to the car and you go sit in the passenger seat.
It's true. I hope it works out. I hope we'll get through this. I
just hope for the best.
Those are like those words when Alistair and I hear those words, it's like chills go down our spine. We're like shiver when somebody says, well, I hope it's all going to be okay. We look at each, I can imagine, because if he's like me, I just look around like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
What does that mean? I hope it's going to be okay. You're living your life. You're creating your reality. It has nothing to do with hope. You're creating what you want.
We went over my personal story in one of the very early episodes of Cosmic Coffee. It might have been actually an interview before we started the show. I'm encouraging people to go and watch the old episodes as well now. But to bring that into context with what you've said, neither of us have lived a life that is based on hope. It's been a life of action and inspired actions, and in working with the law of attraction. This is another thing. What a lot of people think the law of attraction is total bullshit. They don't actually, like, it's an incredible
most people don't understand what it actually means and how to actually do it. I don't think that it has been explained properly.
That's okay. That's why you have an advanced law of attraction coach right here.
Yep. You'll explain it.
Give you the breadcrumbs. Otherwise, I start charging by the hour. But the big thing there, like looking at hope, is that everything in the law of attraction works in a way that you are acting as if what you want to achieve and attract has already happened. Mm-hmm. And you're not pretending. You are rewiring the subconscious mind so it magnetizes towards you. And if you say like you've fallen on hard times, you're living on benefits or welfare, whatever you want to call it, and you've got dreams of starting up a business, it's going to be an amazing force of good for the world, and as a byproduct of that, you probably would become quite wealthy. It's always the wealth aspect that people focus on, which is wrong. You know, it's everything around that. It's what that will create in the world. It's what that will feel like on a day-to-day basis. And once
these beliefs that you're talking about and these emotions have a vibration, and it's coded. So it's just like radio waves. You send out this vibration, and matching vibrations will find you. So if you feel poverty conscious, you will create and manifest poverty situations. My husband and I took an 80% hit on our income because our life revolves around travel. So what we do is we take retreats all year long with groups of people for 10 years. Plus we have in-house groups, yoga studios with tons of people. It's all about interfacing with people and travel. And the COVID took it all out. Nada. No, our income went boom. And so, notice I'm still smiling. What I did was I said, okay, we're living in a new world, so I'm going to adjust to the new world. And I did. And we have been. And it's like a whole nother world, and we're creative, and we are going into our talents and the things we've been always wanting to do and getting closer. And it's like we're teenagers again. We don't even notice the income hit.
That's
and that
fantastic.
vibration is bringing in more success.
Well, this is exactly it, because it was the same for me and Emma. You know, it was, I'm a musician, she's an actor, we worked in hospitality and we organized events and all of these things that now
That are
don't
public.
exist temporarily. So when you recreate your life in that manner, everything else forms around it, because it's not like, oh my God, everything's gone forever. It's just a big pause button. You know, it's a big pause button of recalibration. And the whole point of hope and the addiction of smoking hopium is that you're sat there not taking inspired action.
I hate to say it, Alistair, I'm going to be the bad guy. I will say the people that rely on the word hope are victims.
Yeah.
Is there a better way to say that? I know that sounds very crude. I really apologize in advance if that was too brash or harsh for some people to hear. But it is a victim mentality when you take yourself out of the driver's seat and you put the power somewhere else. You're just, you know, if you're innocently saying like, I hope he likes me, I hope he loves me. I mean, there's an innocence that you can get away with, but we're talking more when you're making a declaration. Like you're really talking about the world and what is happening with your life, and you're putting all your stakes in the ground in the word hope.
So it's really good that you mentioned that, because in this school of thought, there's 4 stages of awakening. The first stage is victimhood, where everything is someone else's fault or something that's happened to you. And when you get out of that, you get into empowerment, which is like, yeah, me versus the world and all of that. But that's also kind of short-sighted too.
Yeah, because you're muscling.
Because then you come up against surrender, which is when you're presented with something that's bigger than you, like COVID and what that means. Because COVID isn't just the virus. COVID is a whole platter of ideas that we need to respond to.
Right.
And integrate. And then if we can surrender to this kind of higher event, higher force, we then get a crack at awakening for real, where we kind of become like the Buddha and get the, you know, the force coming through us, and we can kind of do this great force of good. But none of that is possible if you're sat there hoping, if you're sat there being a victim. And
well, there's a rigidity that comes with that kind of thinking. And when you have rigidity, it's the tunnel vision. And if you have tunnel vision, there's no room for options. There's no room for a plan B. There's no room for something else could happen. So you stay regimented in your belief system, and then you try to change your life from this little tunnel vision that you're in, and you get mad that it's not happening. And that's where you start saying, well, I hope this gets better. And there's an innocence to saying that. So I will mark that comment with, yes, of course, it's just lack of information. You don't realize, but I had to say it kind of harsh so you can really back away from this way of thinking. So this tunnel vision is this lack of understanding of what's really happening. So let's say, how about nobody on the planet knows what's happening, Alistair? How about there's not one human being that knows what's going on? But see, there's some people that are throwing a party about that, and then some people are upset about that. But then you have to ask yourself what the belief systems are that would cause you to be upset that nobody knows what they're doing. So the question I would pose to you is this: since the world has begun, since the beginning of time, do you really think there's anyone on the planet that has ever known what is going on and what they're doing? No, no one. So when you do your history and you really realize everything, this is evolution and sharing, and, you know, we're creating and it's co-creating. When you realize this is all part of just the growth pattern and cycle and seasons that humans go through, you get out of the panic and you stop thinking that the sky is falling like Chicken Little. You're running around, the sky is falling. So you stop with that. And you go more into, oh, we're just expanding, we're going deeper, just like in relationships with each other and other things. So this is a bigger picture. So that's what he's talking about also, I'd like to add.
That's it, because if you see the light, you see your shadow, and you see the shadow, it can be scary because it's darkness, but it's coming from within you. So
let's talk a little bit about what you just said. You said the shadow is scary.
So, well, it can be.
It can be. And it is actually, when you're in it, you really can't see. If you've ever helped somebody who's panicking and they're in the room panicking, you can see there's nothing happening around them. They're safe. Everything's okay. But in their world, it is like they're on fire, like they're dying inside their world. And you're outside watching and you're saying, how do I help somebody who's in that level of fear? So it's really understanding that fear is not that it's out here in the world. It's insular. It's an internal dialogue. It's an internal storyline. And we build and manufacture these storylines since childhood. And that what we're doing now is we're catching it, just like we're doing in the macro, in the world. We're catching these painful stories and these really archaic ways of thinking and being, and things that are causing us destruction and pain and violence and chaos. We're stopping and we're saying, hey, hold on. Is this the best way? Does it feel good? Does anyone like that? What's happening here? So that's what's really happening. So like, I'm glad, Alistair, you brought up the idea of like these dates that are coming, and it's like people are going to get arrested and stuff. You go outside your house, you can get hit by a bus. You cannot determine like exactly how it's going to go down. No one knew the Holocaust was going to happen, and it happened. So what do we do? Like, okay, well, we didn't know we were going to go from coal to electricity, but it happened. So we're advancing and evolving. All these things are happening and we're learning. So we have global warming. Does that mean the end of the world? The sky is falling, Chicken Little? Or do we say, oh, let's do something about that? So we go into the proactive, like Alistair's talking about. And also that's the best way to look at law of attraction, is coming from proactive, engaging thoughts and communication that raise your vibration, so that you can get and attain and match the frequency of the thing you want. Perfect. And he's a great guy to talk about this. If anybody needs law of attraction coaching, contact Alistair.
3 months will change your life.
This is a fun show. I didn't know we were going to go all these places. This show we did not plan. This is the only one we haven't planned prior. We literally got on and we're like, to hell with it. We're just going to fly.
Yeah, I think we just respond to what's out there in in sensible way, because essentially, like I've been doing. Have you watched that documentary, The Social Dilemma, on Netflix? This is about how social media keeps us hooked and manipulated in a way that the algorithm is functioning through like AI and machine learning to really kind of suck us in.
Have you heard of that philosophy where people are fighting against social media, that they're saying the brainwashing of how to act as a society is happening through social media?
Yeah, this basically about that, yeah.
Oh, it's about that, okay.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting theory, and I really actually liked considering that if there was no social media, would we be acting the same way? Would we look the same way, talk the same way? Would we be saying the same things that we're saying today?
I think like we have to reclaim it is my stance, because without it, the COVID situation would have been very difficult.
Oh, yeah. That would have been like the 1920s.
Yeah, we have to be mindful of what we're consuming, because it's a form of food. It's food for the mind. And are you going to feed your mind depressed McDonald's cheeseburgers 24/7, or are you going to cook it something nice? Maybe have a cheeseburger once in a while, because again, it's this idea. Everyone's waiting for a savior. Everyone's waiting for some white knight to come in and save them from the evil, dark forces ruling the world, which is the biggest crock of horse shit you'll ever be sold.
Well, I mean, obviously, look, there's two ways to look at that. It's either that they're on the powers that be, whatever that means, the elite, the 1%, made sure that the masses stayed under control and kept the programming that they're powerless, which is one belief system. It's pretty valid. It sounds about right. It's just patterning and programming. And then you have this other version, which is human evolution itself, the consciousness levels. People didn't even really understand that they had creative power over themselves. They didn't even know what that meant. You say create your reality, nobody knows what you're talking about. This is relatively new that it's kind of spread into the mass consciousness now. You can say it and people are not freaking out as hard. You know, there was a time if you said create your reality, when I started 10 years ago and I started saying that phrase, people thought that was voodoo magic. Voodoo. People would look at me like I'm a witch doctor. That was 10 years ago. Can you imagine? I'm saying creating a reality and they're like, whoa, what are you talking about? And I'm like, wow, this is where we're at right now. Like, oh, bless us humans. Bless us humans that is where we are. So now people can hear it and they feel really cool. Like people who say, yeah, I'm creating my reality. Like they feel hip, like it's a cool thing, which is cute and fun. But yeah, we're coming through all of these stages of self-realization and all these stages of how much power do we actually have? And what is it that we actually can do with that?
So the best, honestly, the best thing we can do is become self-aware, you know, and being self-aware, it's moves so far beyond the statement that it's really kind of like,
you know, for people who don't know how to be self-aware, can I tell you the fastest, quickest hack that you can smack yourself right into self-awareness really quickly? It's brutal, but it works. Get a room full of friends and family and have them give you honest feedback. And you tell them, you sit in a chair in the middle of the room and you tell them there's nothing they can say that they'll get in trouble. You won't hurt them. You won't be mad at them later. You're not going to resent anything they're going to say. This is constructive because you're changing your life and you want to hear feedback on how you occur. Because a part of self-realization, if you've never done this before and you never have been self-aware, is you don't know how to see yourself. You don't know how it reflects out to others. You don't know how you occur. So you get a room full of friends and family, or you do it individually, but it's best to do it in a group. And you literally, and I've been through this, like hardcore. And I even took courses where they make you do this. So, and I had to hear how I sound, how I talk, how I listen, the feedback. You want to, I'll tell you a couple things just for fun. If you want me, I'll tell you some of the stuff they told me. Okay.
Okay.
It's like my little badge of honor of some of the insanity that I have done. So the feedback I got when I first did this 20 years ago, and they gave me feedback, here's what they said. Number one, you interrupt everybody and you do not listen. See where I still have some of that? See where I still do that? Okay, that's one. Number two, you don't care what anybody's saying. Okay, you see where I still do that? There's little things, there's little moments where that peeks through, and that's something I'm always working on, because that's the first part of self-realization, is you have to be able to own yourself without shame. Okay, so the next thing they would tell me is, when I walk in a room, I don't care who or what is going on. It's about what I want and what I'm saying and what I'm doing. Now, I converted that bad information. I converted that into, oh, I'm supposed to be on stage. I'm supposed to be doing something bigger. So I turned that into a positive. Instead of trampling over everyone, I'm learning how to kind of maneuver better. Another thing they would tell me is I'm very harsh with how I speak. So I say things that are very painful to hear, that I have no buffer and I don't make anything pretty. And that comes from, no one did that to me. So I didn't know that's how people talk to me. So then I just talked how they talked. So, you know, this has been about learning and understanding, and now I'm much more sensitive and I'm much more careful what I say, and I make sure everybody's taken care of in the conversation. I do my best to listen. I just am a bottle rocket. I have a lot of information. I just want to burst out, and it's good to teach me how to tune in and be quiet, take it in, really listen to what someone's saying. That's why I like to, whatever Alistair's saying, I always like to pull it over here and talk about what he's saying to really show that I am listening. It's a part of my self-awareness development program. Okay, so I could keep going, but you guys get it. You guys get the point. So you have to do something like that to start, at least to kickstart. You have to kickstart somewhere. You have to be able to hear how you occur and what you do. Like my friends would tell me, my close friends, what they told me was that I'm not a very good friend. That was very painful for me to hear. And it hurt so deeply. And I didn't know why they said that. And then I realized why they said that is because my parents moved every 6 months and I went to a lot of different public schools. So I never was able to keep my friends. So my friends were always like, they came and went. And especially LA is kind of known for that behavior anyway. So on top of that, so it's just very flippant. So people never felt I was committed to the relationship in the friendship. And that's because I didn't have any foundation in that. So I didn't know what that was. So you see, in the beginning, when I first got that feedback, I was hurt, thinking I did something wrong. What did I do that they don't feel like I'm their friend? But it's just because I wasn't familiar with keeping a long term. And I had no sisters or siblings or brothers, anything. You see how this works? So when you start your feedback, when you first hear these things, it's going to sound like daggers to your ears because you're going to think like, oh my God, I'm so innocent. I didn't mean to do all these things. I sound horrible, like a monster, but it's just because you didn't know. And there's all these, you can track it back to your storyline, your childhood. So that's the beginning of self-realization. You start there. You have to start with, how do I occur to you? And it's always really a good idea to ask people. Just ask anyone, like always ask, how do I come across? How am I sounding? Do I sound clear? Am I making sense? How do I occur? Like, it's just nice to know in the beginning when you really need feedback. And as a teacher myself, I've asked other teachers and other healers, how do I occur as a healer? How do I occur as a teacher? So I'm still asking those questions and I fine tune constantly. So I'm pretty well versed of how I occur to people. I have a pretty good sense. Like if I were to tell you exactly how I occur right now in detail, Alistair, you would probably be shocked how much I know about how I occur. But then again, you could probably do the same exact thing. I would be very certain that you would be very aware of how you occur. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because you're very self-aware. I could feel that in you. I feel that in you, and I know that you're very deliberate.
As much as we've lived the lives that we have done, we've also had a lot of training as well as doing our own work. Training isn't the golden goose, it's just the keys, it's the roadmap, isn't it? So there could be a fun class for us to teach, actually.
Wow.
Maybe we could do an hour and a half seminar on kind of easing yourself into the bathtub of self-awareness.
Whoa, that's a great idea.
Giving some tools, we can have our perspectives. Could be quite helpful.
I love that. That's a done deal. That would be great. There's a lot of people who don't know where to begin. They would love to start working on themselves, but they don't really know where to start. And the thing is, the biggest thing that us healers are very aware of when we teach this is, since you're just starting out, it's just the beginning, you're not equipped with the information to hold yourself steady through these conversations. So you can get very triggered and very hurt. So you have to be really aware that you are creating a very safe environment, that you are about to launch into a new way of being where you are going to be aware of yourself from now on. So you have to really be very ready, because somebody's going to say something to you that you will not even believe that they just said. You won't even believe they just said that. And you're going to be certain that it's their opinion and it's not real. But hey, if it occurs to them that way, whether it's real or not, that's just how you're occurring. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how you occur. Like I met Alistair's girlfriend a couple times on Zoom, and she occurred to me like a sweet, gentle fairy, very, very lovely. So I told him that. And he said, oh, yes, but There's another whole side that's intense, a very
She's
intense
also
warrior,
like
intense
she's also
warrior
like
fairy.
Rambo.
What was that?
She's also like Rambo.
Rambo, that's what you said.
I've described her as like if Rambo was a pixie.
Yeah, exactly. So she may have occurred that way to me in the first meeting. And you know what? That is valid for whatever that moment was. But Alistair knows her better, obviously. So his feedback would be very like accurate about to her personality. So she's has this Rambo side that I didn't see. So these kind of conversations are really important. Like if Emma were to hear right now that Alistair says, yes, she is a fairy and she's also Rambo, she would laugh because she would know probably what that meant. But she would
She's just
probably
I've
be
just heard her
fascinated.
come. I've
Huh?
just heard her come down the stairs. Shall I just pull her in a minute?
Yeah, call her in here.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the hot seat.
Ooh.
So we were just talking about when you're helping somebody to learn the first stages of self-awareness, sometimes the very first thing you have to do is get feedback. So from people who know you, and that's like the first stage to begin to understand how to see yourself is how people see you. So I shared with Alistair how I see you when the few times that I've talked to you, I told him how you occur to me. And he laughed and he added his interpretation also. So then I thought I'd present it to you so you can hear the two versions of how him and I see you
Okay.
in feedback. So I said to him, Emma is an angel fairy, completely sweet and gentle, so adorable. And then he said, and she's Rambo. And then I said, okay, put both of those together. And that's what you have. So I wanted to tell you, this is the feedback that you occurred like to me just in a couple times that I've met you. And then his feedback, he knows you. So what do you think about hearing that?
I think because what do I think of it? I mean, I know that he's seen me in certain situations where it makes a lot of sense. I think the fairy angel thing, I get called a fairy quite a lot.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, yeah. I've even like played Tinkerbell in a few different like scenarios. So like I walk on my tiptoes, so I like tinker about. It's been something that I've never really managed to actually stop doing, even though I've tried.
I've known people who do that, and I find that to be 100% fairy. I mean, you are just in the fairy realm if you walk in your tiptoes. I remember in school there was kids, male and female, they would walk on their tiptoes all the time.
Yeah, that's me.
Even in even outside in public in their shoes, you can't really tell, but they're walking in their tiptoes.
Yeah, I've broken so many shoes because I bend them in a funny way because of walking on my tiptoes. So they always split like where my toes bend.
Yeah, that's true. So, and then you see the Rambo and you see the fairy. So yeah, that's your feedback.
I love that. Rambo.
I think it's because there's two sides to the fairy energy that gets overlooked.
Yeah,
I think
fairies are badass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're not like some delicate, gentle little thing that needs to be kept in a box.
Yeah.
It's like
more feedback.
You can like go out there and it's like that meme of like, how someone's spreading light in the world versus how like other people spreading light in the world. You get a picture of like a dragon with like fire, like
yes.
There's no need to be like, as much as delicate and dainty. There's also like the side of you that's complete badass.
Yeah.
That might not be immediately apparent.
And also it means that like when I am a badass and I can present that in quite a delicate way, which actually is very helpful to people that are perhaps receiving end of that, because it's like, oh, well, it's coming from the place of the fairy and the angel, but it's still Rambo talking through them.
It's true. You know, my best friend Erica, who you started talking to, right? She's very much like you. She's a fairy. She's tiny. She's a fairy, but she's like, oh my God, I would never cross her. I would never cross her. She's hardcore, hardcore to the max. And I'm 5'10", she's like 5'3". And so I come across like all like that, like Hulk Hogan. But when we're together, we're a match because her energy and my energy are similar because we're so tough. We're badasses, you know?
Yeah, I can see
she looks
that.
like
We
a
were
fairy.
actually just talking, and like she's also into like the herbal realms as well.
Right.
So yeah, it's really cool.
Aww. It's so
Thank
sweet.
you.
Well, I'm so glad you just let us impromptu throw you on the air like this.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Alistair. That was a really fun treat.
Yeah, I'm up for appearing.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Emma, so much.
Thank you, dear. I'm going to get my ass kicked later for that, I can tell. But...
Oh, I'm sure you will.
No.
Do you know when you got really close to the camera, I really got to see your features? You're much more, was it Persian, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like a chameleon.
Like when you get close, I got to see like the curls and I got to see the shape of your face and I could see the mix. I could really see your other side.
Well, this is, I've chosen an avatar that is globally representative.
Oh, that's true.
Nationally representative.
That's true. You know, that's like Riz, because Riz, you don't know what. Sometimes you think he's Indian, then he looks Hispanic, then he looks Native American, then he looks Brazilian. He has all these different looks. Yeah, so good. Well, everybody, I just want to tell you guys, we're at the hour mark. I just want to say what a great note to end on. I know that it seemed a little lighter, but if you think about it, there's a lot of heavy stuff that we actually shared with you. Good meats and potatoes, good meal that you can make from this conversation. If any of you want to get to know Alistair more, as I say all the time, make sure you go on Facebook at United Starseed Connections group. I'm the founder, he's a founding member, and he's also my co-star, but he is a life coach extraordinaire. He is also a law of attraction specialist. He specializes in decoding and reprogramming. He's launching his big business. It's called forget frequencies.
Higher transmissions.
It was called Higher Transmissions, and he's available online, and so you can do sessions with him over the phone. And cherry on top of the cake is that he also is an excellent tarot reader, and he will give you an amazing tarot reading too. So he's genuinely a magician, master technician. So thank you so much, Alistair, for being on the show with me once again. Please subscribe, please like, please comment, be active on my page so that I can get out there. We need to get this show out there. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Any last words from you, Alistair?
Don't get stuck in binary thinking.
Or hope.
Yeah. Put the hopium pipe down. And
put the hope crack pipe down.
Yeah. Understand that the world is a spectrum of grey, not black and white.
Truly. Blessings, everybody. Much love to you. We'll see you next week. And we love you. Bye.